This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated in recreating the events. What you are about to see is not a news broadcast.
Just 2 months ago, a kind-hearted truck driver in Virginia treated a young homeless man to a hot meal. Incredibly, this chance encounter has now become a key piece of evidence in the strange case of 28-year-old John Cheek. Cheek, a Memphis businessman, mysteriously dropped from sight in December of 1993, just days before finalizing a deal that would have made him a millionaire. Now his family needs your help to find him. Earl and Donna Chotback scrimped and saved for years to build a log cabin home of their own. But when they handed over their life savings to a smooth-talking contractor named Mark Mitchell, the Chotbacks never guessed that they had become the latest victims of a lucrative million-dollar scam. In 1917, 3 peasant children in Fatima, Portugal, claimed they were visited several times by a vision of the Virgin Mary. During the controversy that followed, they revealed that the Virgin would make one final appearance and perform a great miracle. Many of the 70,000 religious pilgrims who came for the occasion were not disappointed. Tonight we'll take you to Portugal to investigate the fabled miracles of Fatima. Join me for these intriguing new stories and more on another edition of Unsolved Mysteries. The Church of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City is visited each year by millions of Catholic pilgrims. According to legend, it was on this very spot that the Virgin Mary, Mother of Jesus Christ, appeared to a Christian convert in 1531. Catholic authorities have judged the vision to be a miracle worthy of belief. Millions also make the pilgrimage to the Basilica at Lourdes, France, where Catholic tradition says the Virgin Mary appeared in 1858. And then there is Fatima, Portugal. It was here in 1917 that many believe the Virgin Mary made her most dramatic appearance, seen by 3 peasant children, 10-year-old Lucia Santos and her 2 younger cousins, Jacinta and Francisco Martu. Their extraordinary account began in the quiet solitude of rural Portugal, where the following scenes were filmed. May 13, 1917. A Sunday in the small farming community of Fatima. Lucia Santos and her cousins had taken their sheep to an area known as the Cova da Iria, land owned by Lucia's family. As the flock grazed, the children began to play.
Estavam a brincar, a fazer uma parede à volta de uma pequena.
They were building a little wall around a tree when there was a flash of light. And Lucia thought the flash was a sign of rain. She thought that it was lightning. So she said, "Let's go home so we don't get caught by the rain."
The children glimpsed a second flash of lightning, which heralded something far greater than a rainstorm.
Ai, meu Deus.
Não tenhas medo. Eu não vos faço mal.
According to Lucia, the glowing figure said she had come from heaven and that she would not harm them.
E o que é que Vossa Mercê me quer?
Vim para pedir-vos que vinhais aqui 6 meses seguidos no dia 13, esta mesma hora. Depois vos direi quem sou e o que quero.
E eu também vou para o céu?
Vais sim.
E a Jacinta?
The lady told Lucia that she and her 2 cousins would be called to heaven. She then asked the children to be her messengers and warned them that in doing so they would endure great hardships.
Mas a graça de Deus será o vosso conforto.
The astonishing visitation was over. But Lucia Santouche and her cousins had become the key figures in an episode that is now regarded as one of the great miracles of Catholicism. 6 times, Lucia would claim the Virgin Mary appeared to them. On the 6th occasion, tens of thousands were on hand for a final dazzling spectacle. Not everyone, however, was inspired by the rumors of a miracle. Lucia's mother was in fact furious at her daughter's involvement.
Oh, Lúcia, que mentiras andas para aí a dizer? Então andas a dizer que viste uma senhora do céu?
Quem disse isso foi a Jacinta, não foi tia.
Mas tu com isso?
Her mother punished her every now and again.
João Martu, Lucia's cousin, was then a young boy.
It wasn't that her mother was bad, but she wanted to have her daughter to say that this was a lie. But Lucia kept saying, how can I say it was a lie if I actually saw her?
For Lucia Santouche, the suffering predicted by the lady had begun. But even in the face of her family's hostility, Lucia returned with her cousins to the Cova da Iria on June 13th. They were joined by some 50 villagers, drawn by rumors of the impending visitation. Once again, the 3 children said the lady from heaven appeared to them. As in the first visitation, only Lucia spoke to the vision.
Posso-me ser que me quer.
Although some claimed that an unusual cloud of light was visible, no one else saw the lady from heaven.
Queria pedir-lhe também que nos levasse para o céu.
Sim. A Jacinta e o Francisco levo-os em breve. Mas tu ficas cá mais algum tempo.
When news of the second episode reached Lucia's mother, she was still outraged to find her daughter involved in what she regarded as a hoax.
Her mother said, you're going to go to the priest and you're going to confess to him in front of the altar in the church that you lied.
In an act of startling disobedience for the time and place, 10-year-old Lucia Santouche refused to discuss the lady from heaven with Fatima's parish priest, Father Emmanuel Ferreira.
Perdão, não lhe posso dizer.
Basta! Tens de dizer ao Sr. Prior o que ouviste.
Mas, mãe, eu não posso.
Não me parece que seja uma revelação do céu.
Father Ferreira found himself in a politically delicate position. The government saw the Catholic Church as a bitter rival for the public's loyalty. Ferreira feared any endorsement of Lucia's claims would be taken as an attempt to boost the Church's influence and would bring the wrath of the politicians upon him.
The church, for example, could be taken over by the government in the sense that the government would seize all of the church property in Portugal. There was the possibility of the government physically removing bishops, imprisoning them, or sending them out of the country. That was done with some bishops, not all. So there are many things that the government could do.
Talvez se trate de engano do demónio. Talvez o demónio te tenha enganado para trazer falsas esperanças aos homens.
Well, obviously, for a 10-year-old child, the word of a priest was an important thing to hear. And Lucia left the church with a very big problem. She had to admit that maybe the demon had got into her, that this was an illusion created by the devil, that perhaps her mother was right, that she hadn't really seen anything at all.
In her memoirs, which she began writing when she was 28, Lucia Santouche described her tortured internal debate.
As I heard people say that the devil always brings conflict and disorder, I began to think that truly, ever since I had started seeing these things, our home was no longer the same, for joy and peace had fled. What anguish I felt.
July 13th, 1917, the appointed day for the third appearance. By now, word of the miraculous visions had spread. Pilgrims clogged the road leading to the Cova, and many beseeched Lucia to intervene with a lady from heaven on their behalf. At 12 noon, the lady once again appeared, and once again, only to the 3 children.
Queríamos saber quem é. Por favor, faça o milagre para que toda a gente acredite que Vossa Mercê nos aparece.
The lady reminded Lucia to return at noon on the 13th day of each month. She also promised that on her 6th appearance, she would perform a miracle for all to see and believe. The Lady from Heaven then invoked a terrifying vision of hell, which Lucia would later describe in her memoirs.
Plunged in this fire were demons and souls in human form amid shrieks and groans of pain and despair, which horrified us and made us tremble with fear.
Lucia claimed the specter of hell was the lady's warning that God was offended by recent events in Europe. World War I was then in its 3rd relentless year. The lady predicted that the war would soon end, only to be replaced by a more serious threat, Russia. Lucia knew nothing of that nation or its revolution, but she claimed the lady deemed Russia an offense to God. Many believe these words anticipated the rise of an atheistic government, the Communists. According to Lucia, the lady promised another destructive war if Russia was not restored to faith. Lucia said the Lady from Heaven made one other pronouncement, but was adamant that Lucia keep it a secret. 1 month later, Lucia's will would be severely tested. August 13th, the day of the 4th appearance, the local government administrator, Arturo Santos, offered to personally escort Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco to the coda.
Tu achas que ela gostava que tu contasses esse segredo a alguém que a pudesse ajudar nesta missão? Podes estar descansada que eu não contarei a ninguém. Está bem. Quando lá chegarmos, tu vais perguntar.
Se você quiser, eu posso perguntar a Nossa Senhora.
Não te preocupes, porque esse atalho nós não podemos chegar atrasados.
Mãe! Pai! Que é isto?
The abduction was a stunning turn of events. Lucia and her cousins were whisked away to an uncertain fate at a government prison some 9 miles from Fatima. The administrator was convinced the children were perpetrating a hoax at the behest of the church, and he was certain he could coax a lady's secret, if there was such a thing, from young Lucia.
Leva o rapaz. Bom, como vocês se recusam a contar aquilo que sabem, a única alternativa que eu tenho é atirá-los para o azeite a ferver. O azeite está pronto, hein? E eu também. Leva, rapaz.
Não tenhas medo, Lúcia. Eu volto a ver-te no céu.
Então, ainda te recusas a contar, hein? Os teus primos estão mortos. Queres que te aconteça o mesmo que a eles, hein?
Eu prometi a Nossa Senhora que não contava.
The torment lasted for 3 days. All the while, the children's families and angry villagers clamored at the walls. Finally, the administrator had no choice but to admit his failure. He allowed the children to return home. According to Lucia Santos, the Lady from Heaven appeared a 4th time and a 5th as scheduled. As the date for the 6th appearance approached, excitement built to a fever pitch. October 13th, 1917, the day of the long-awaited miracle dawned wet and miserable. Thousands descended on Fatima, and an ill-humored crowd milled impatiently outside of Lucia's home. There were even mutterings of reprisals against Lucia if no miracle took place. These photographs show some of the estimated 70,000 onlookers who gathered that day. Many had come from hundreds of miles away. Soon after Lucia arrived at the Cova da Iria, the torrential downpour had come to an end. The huge crowd included both the curious and the faithful. Shepherds and servants mingled with the nobility. Also in attendance were skeptical reporters from the major newspapers. The local priest, fearing a public fiasco that would embarrass the church, was among the most vocal of the doubters.
Que horas é que ela disse que aparecia?
Ao meio-dia.
Já passa do meio-dia. Ela já não vem. Oi, são todos. Já passa do meio-dia. A senhora já não vem. Já não há milagre. Vão para casa, vão para casa, vá. Vão para casa. Já
Lá vem ela! Posso-me ser que me quer?
The unruly crowd grew silent as Lucia began to speak, although to the onlookers, she appeared to be talking into thin air.
Eu tinha muitas coisas para lhe pedir. A cura dos doentes e a conversão dos pecadores. Eu peço perdão pelos seus pecados. Olhem para o sol.
According to many eyewitness accounts, the sun began to undulate, ribbons of multicolored light shooting across the heavens. Then suddenly, the sun seemed to fall. Later, many eyewitnesses would say that they feared being scorched. The crowd watched dumbstruck as the sun abruptly reversed course and returned to its rightful place in the sky.
The miracle of the sun at Fatima is certainly the most spectacular physical manifestation, physical miracle that has been associated with Our Lady. She had to manifest her presence in a grand manner, in a very convincing and spectacular manner, because it was important that people all over the world should believe what she had said.
The awesome celestial display supposedly lasted for 12 minutes. Accounts from within a 600-square-mile area around Fatima substantiated many of the first-hand descriptions. But incredibly, some eyewitnesses at the Cova claimed they saw absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. Still, history has favored the more spectacular accounts. Avelino de Almeida, the editor of a government-controlled newspaper, came to Fatima a confirmed skeptic and left a believer.
At the hour foretold, the rain ceased to fall. The dense mass of clouds parted, and the sun began to whirl around in a wild and violent dance, with such lovely, glowing colors passing successively over the sun's surface.
In years to come, the events of October 13 would be the subject of considerable debate. Some dismissed the spectacle as a textbook case of mass hysteria, but many found the eyewitness accounts to be credible, and word spread across Europe and around the world. Today, a basilica stands where Lucia and her cousins claim to have seen the Lady from Heaven. In 1930, the Catholic Church recognized the events at Fatima as a miracle worthy of belief. Jacinta and Francisco Martu did not live to witness this official confirmation. Both died during a worldwide influenza epidemic within 3 years of the visions. Many believe it was a fulfillment of the Virgin's promise that they would soon be called to heaven. Over the decades, Fatima's call to the faithful has grown ever more powerful. The tide of pilgrims has swelled from the thousands who joined Lucia in 1917 to several million in recent years. Even those who remain skeptical of miracles puzzle over the mystifying events at Fatima and the 10-year-old girl who many believe was chosen to be God's messenger.
While there were some who admired me and considered me a saint, there were always others who called me a hypocrite and a sorceress. They are all mistaken. I am not a saint, and I am not a liar. Only God knows what I am.
Many believe that the Lady from Heaven predicted some of the most important events of the 20th century. The end of World War I, the onset of World War II, the rise and fall of communism in Europe, even the assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II, which took place on May 13, 1981, 64 years to the day after the appearance of the first vision. To the skeptical, it's all simply coincidence. To the faithful, it is proof that a miracle did occur at Fatima. When we return, a family's dream of building a home is snuffed out by a smooth-talking con artist.
Come on, kids, let's get up here and look at the view, all right? From our property, Alex.
It is hard to imagine a more beautiful setting for a home than this meadow in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, 200 miles northwest of Denver.
Don't you think we ought to build a log house right here and big picture window?
It was here, on 6 acres of land, that Earl and Donna Chotvax planned to build their dream home. For several years, they had scrimped and saved until they finally had enough to begin construction on a modern-day log cabin, similar to this one, for themselves and their 2 children. But in 1991, the Chotvax hopes came crashing down, shattered not by accident or act of God, but by the deeds of this man, a sophisticated con artist who called himself Mark Mitchell.
Look, Earl, here's an ad about a log home company that needs funds.
In April of that year, Earl and Donna answered an innocent-looking newspaper ad and talked to the owner of Colorado Log Homes, Mark Mitchell.
Well, you know, Earl, we're kind of a young business, but we do have a couple of clients up there in Breckenridge. I could,
It seemed like a great opportunity for us because the company supposedly was growing, which is one of the reasons that we really started going with this company instead of a more established company somewhere else. Also, that
Mitchell's plan was simple. The Chotvax would invest $25,000 in his growing business. In return, Mitchell would give them a large discount on the construction of their log cabin. Plus, the $25,000 investment would be returned with interest.
We'll knock $25,000 off the price of your home.
This.
What a view. Isn't that great?
One humdinger, huh?
In early May, an architect and a salesman from Mitchell's office came up to inspect the Chotvax property.
they looked at different views from our property and kept using the word stunning. They could build us a stunning home.
If you're ready to go with this, Earl, I have a contract with me right here.
Well, you know, we've got the money down at the bank, and
after the Chotvax attorney approved the contract, Earl and Donna would hand over a $25,000 deposit to Mitchell's salesman.
We had been saving money and living very frugally from the moment we got married. So when we gave them the $25,000, that was our whole dream.
All right, now, this is my copy. That's your home. That's mine. Come on, I'll buy you lunch.
Congratulations. Okay, thanks. It seemed like we'd been waiting for such a long time, and it was all coming true. I mean, they said it was real, and we believed them.
The log yard at Mitchell's Denver headquarters gave every appearance of legitimacy. Workers processed hundreds of logs, and the shells of cabins were carefully pre-assembled. Supposedly, each shell would later be taken apart, trucked to a building site, and reassembled on a concrete foundation laid by one of Mitchell's crews. But after 8 weeks, there was absolutely no progress at Earl and Donna's property. The critical job of measuring and pouring the foundation had yet to begin. The Chotvax made the 4-hour drive to Mitchell's log yard in Denver to see for themselves what was wrong.
There you go, into your new home, temporarily.
Look at the logs.
However, Mark Mitchell was able to lay their anxieties to rest.
Very nice, huh? Feel it, feel that?
They had started our shell, and it seemed to have all the basic things that were in our plans, and Earl measured it. And the kids, you know, we took pictures of ourselves inside of it, and just seemed real exciting, you know. It seemed like it was really happening again. And so, of course, then we were back up.
Yeah, this is nice.
But weeks more passed without any construction at the property. It took a siege of phone calls for Earl and Donna to convince Mitchell to dispatch a work crew.
They sent an excavator up, and we pounded in the nails and measured where the corners of the house were and stood in the spot where the living room was going to be and imagined our view.
This is the foundation, so where you'll be, the first floor will be up here, but the windows will be here.
We were starting to think, well, it's not going to be done by Christmas, but it might be done by March. We still really didn't believe that it wasn't going to happen.
Well, Earl, Donna, I'm sorry I had to keep you waiting. Please come in and have a seat.
On October 1st, the bitter reality finally hit Earl and Donna. They had applied to their local bank for a construction loan and were stunned to discover that their request had been denied.
Well, I'm afraid the news isn't good. Now, it has nothing to do with you two. The problem is with the builder. It appears this man is in some serious trouble. He has been taking deposit money, just as he did yours, and then has not started construction on the homes. As a matter of fact, Mark Mitchell is not even his real name. It's Wade Mitchell Parker. I'm awfully sorry. I wish there was something more that I could do.
At that point,
now, if you can find another
I felt nauseous. I just suddenly just was sick, feeling as though we were going to lose all the money that we had given to Mark Mitchell.
On October 5th, 1991, Donna and Earl once again drove to Colorado Log Homes, where they had a 10 a.m. appointment with a man they now knew as Wade Mitchell Parker. He showed up more than 2 hours late.
I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've been waiting for almost 2.5 hours.
To get to a phone. I'm sorry. Is my secretary in
Could
there?
have called us before we left home.
I tried. I'm sorry. I just got tired.
200 miles to get down here.
I know it. I'm sorry. Let's go inside and we'll talk about what I got.
Yeah, well, you know, nothing's been happening with our log show.
Yeah, we got a little.
What's going on around here?
Well, just Earl, just a little hang up. If we go and sit down and cool off a little, make a couple phone calls, we'll get your money out here to you. We'll get it all done.
Do you have our money?
No, I don't.
You don't have our money?
No, I don't. I know, but let's go in.
Wade Parker agreed to refund Earl and Donna's deposit. Claiming to be short of cash, he gave them a promissory note, essentially a $25,000 IOU.
Go ahead and sign it. Helen, you want to witness this, please?
We were still trying to be nice about it, but I think deep down inside we really both knew that probably we weren't ever going to see our money.
Okay, 30 days, folks. We'll get this all wrapped up. That'll be the end of it.
We finished up the meeting and we left, and that's the last time we ever saw him. I spoke to him maybe 3 or 4 times after that on the telephone, but we never saw him again.
Within the month, Wade Mitchell Parker declared bankruptcy and disappeared. The Chotvaks never received a dime, and they soon discovered that they were not the only people taken in by the con man. In November of 1991, the Chotvaks joined more than 30 of Parker's other victims at a meeting organized by Colorado authorities. As a group, their total loss exceeded $1 million.
Boy, this guy's...
We should have got together a long time ago, Jerry.
Yeah, he's really slick, isn't he?
Well, I guess so.
In the end, I got my plans, and I guess those probably were worth about $1,000, and I lost $9,000.
I expected to have a log home from Mark. I'd expected to have my $20,000 back, and I expected all of this to happen within a very expedient amount of time, and it didn't happen. So I lost almost $25,000, and I don't have a log home.
What did he tell you about the land in Bennett?
When we finally came to terms with the fact that we lost the money, we felt stupid. We just felt like we had done a stupid thing. And when we realized that lots of big-time people, not just the naive young couple with 2 small children, a lot of big-time people lost a lot of money too, we didn't feel quite so stupid.
A number of people have asked us whether we think that Wade Mitchell Parker was just a bad businessman or whether we think he was a con person from the very beginning.
Take $35,000 off the price of your home.
Some of the transactions he made are just plain crooked. There's no other explanation for what he did. Also, we haven't been able to find the money, and we think it's got to be out there somewhere. The fact that we haven't been able to find it and that Parker fled during the bankruptcy proceedings is a real indication to us that this was a con from the beginning.
Some of Parker's wealthier victims have been able to absorb their losses or write them off as business expenses. But for Earl and Donna Chotvax and many others like them, the dream of owning a home has been snuffed out, perhaps forever.
I don't think that you ever want to give up on a dream, and I think that in a way we were realizing that we might have to give up on that dream. We might never ever get another opportunity to give someone money to build us a home.
Update. On August 11th, 1994, Wade Mitchell Parker was arrested in Cobb County, Georgia, some 1,300 miles from Colorado. There, Parker was using two new aliases, Ronald Anderson and Larry Wheeler. But information developed from our program helped reveal his true identity. On September 26, 1994, Wade Mitchell Parker was arraigned in Colorado on fraud and theft charges. Our cameras are not allowed inside the courtroom. However, Earl and Donna Chotvax made sure they were on hand to see justice done.
If he'd have been an honest man, we'd be living in our home right now and raising our children. I think that anybody who has been ripped off this way could take heart from this, you know, knowing that with enough perseverance, they may get their guy, you know. So it certainly gave me a lot of heart when I was beginning to lose hope.
Next, a family is reunited, thanks to you, our viewers. Bill O'Neill of Santa Monica, California, was always told he was just a baby when his father died. But throughout his childhood, Bill was plagued by the nagging suspicion that he was somehow different from his older brothers and sisters.
I was the only one with hazel eyes, and everybody else had these bright blue eyes. My skin was more like an olive skin, where they were fairer skinned. Not that anything was ever said to me or anything like that that was different than anybody else, like my mom didn't treat me any different. Just a feeling inside, like something was lost.
Years later, Bill's suspicions were confirmed when he discovered that his father, Hugh Paul O'Neill, had in fact died 2 years before Bill was born. When Bill confronted his mother, she told him everything. Bill learned that in November of 1958, Paul O'Neill was a patient at Chicago's VA hospital. There, Bill's mother met a friend of Paul's named Jim Burke, a divorced father of 4.
So this must be the beautiful lady you've been keeping from me.
Sadly, within a month, Paul O'Neill would die.
My wife, Lynn. Nice meeting you. Nice meeting you.
Before long, Jim Burke became a familiar presence in the O'Neill household. 2 years later, Bill was born. His mother was pregnant again when the relationship with Jim Burke ended. Bill was stunned when his mother also told him that his younger sister, who he thought was dead, had actually been put up for adoption. In 1990, Bill O'Neill was reunited with his sister Karen Althouse. Together they set their sights on one final goal, finding their natural father, Jim Burke. On the night of our broadcast, a woman named Eileen Essler of New Lenox, Illinois, called our phone center and identified herself as one of Jim Burke's 4 children from his previous marriage. Bill and Karen were saddened to hear that their father had passed away in 1988, but they were overjoyed that Eileen and another half-sister, Sheila Ann Haskins, were anxious to meet them. A week later, Bill O'Neill, Karen Althouse, and their families gathered at Karen's house to await the arrival of Eileen and Sheila Ann.
Hello there. I didn't know I was going to do this.
I felt a connection, a definite connection, like when I reached out to hug them. I don't know. I honestly, to be honest, I didn't feel like I was gonna be as emotionally tied as I felt.
Ditto.
For Sheila Ann and Eileen, the bond was just as strong.
As soon as I saw Bill, as soon as I saw his face, there was absolutely no doubt in my mind that he was a brother. No doubt.
I felt wonderful. I mean, like Sheila, I wanted to touch him. I just wanted to touch him, to have a baby brother and baby sister. I know they're not. They're so much taller than we are. Okay, this is our father.
Later that afternoon, Bill and Karen sat down with her new sisters to learn about their father, Jim Burke.
And how was it related to her? This is what I've wondered all my life. Who were my parents? Do I have more family? Did I have brothers and sisters? Things like that. And it's exciting to finally see them, to touch them, to get to know them.
The reunion was especially poignant for Bill O'Neill. His lifelong feelings of isolation were replaced with a new sense of belonging.
I figured, hey, we'll get together with them and
We'll be
make
like
nice.
neighbors.
Yeah, you know, get some pictures, get some more information about our dad, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. It was more, it was just an inside warm feeling that everything was now completed.
That's true. Oh, God.
Great to hear.
For Bill, Karen, Eileen, and Sheila Ann, this was just the first of many gatherings to come. Bill and Karen have since met one of their half-brothers, and next March they hope to meet another at a family wedding in Illinois. Also in attendance will be a grandmother, an aunt, and 12 cousins. John Cheek seemed destined for success. At 26, fresh out of business school, he had been hired as a chief financial officer of one of the larger real estate companies in Tennessee. By the age of 28, John had purchased this home in a comfortable part of East Memphis. At work, he was engineering the deal of a lifetime. For months, John had helped lay the groundwork to take his company public. He had logged countless 18-hour days and flown thousands of miles to talk with investors around the country and overseas. By December of 1993, the complex plan was on the verge of completion. Millions of dollars were at stake. If the deal was successful, the company would be thrust into national prominence literally overnight.
John was very proud of his accomplishment of getting this job, and he worked very hard, nonstop, almost, to see that his duties were fulfilled and that every I was dotted and every T was crossed.
In their wildest dreams, John Cheek's family and friends never imagined he would end up the focus of an anguished search, his face peering out from thousands of flyers plastered around their hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. But on December 2nd, 1993, John Cheek did not show up for work. At company headquarters, surprise quickly turned to concern.
I thought possibly that maybe he was just tired and he might be somewhere resting. At least that's what we were all hoping that's what had happened. But it was out of character, and then as the day went on, and then that night, when no one had heard from John, we began to know that something terribly was wrong.
Early the next morning, John's car was discovered. It had been abandoned on Interstate 55, where the highway crosses over the Mississippi River, about 12 miles from John's home.
There was no signs of foul play on the car. The car was checked. Everything appeared to be intact. The Cheek family examined the car also, and it appeared to be just the way John would have left it.
Police theorized that John Cheek had taken his own life by leaping into the swift waters of the Mississippi. However, extensive searches of the river and its banks failed to locate his body. To those who knew John, suicide seemed out of the question from the start.
We didn't believe that he could be normal right up until 11 p.m. one night, and then all of a sudden jump off the bridge the next day. So
We were just left with the same position we are right now, that it was just some big mystery had happened to him and we didn't know what.
2 months passed with no leads, no word from John, no reason to believe he was even alive, until February 14th, 1994. On that day, a trucker named Ron Jackson rolled into West Memphis, Arkansas. Over the years, Jackson had seen hundreds of missing person flyers at truck stops all across the country. But now he was stunned to find himself staring into the face of someone he recognized, a young man he had befriended just the day before.
You never really expected to jump right out and say, hey, I know this person. Hey, I had breakfast with this person the other morning. So that was added to my surprise of seeing this poster, and this identity was so strong. And it just kind of grabbed a hold of me and shook me like this was the individual, period.
It was in Raphine, Virginia, some 700 miles east, that Ron found a young drifter sleeping inside a truck stop.
You have breakfast yet?
No, I have no money.
No problem, let's go. I'm buying you breakfast. And my first impression of this man when I saw him is that he was not homeless people. He was not street people. In the conversation, there was no street lingo. He was clean, and the white shirt was so white, it looked like it had just come out of the laundry. Okay, help yourself.
The young man didn't volunteer his name. He spoke only of an Arkansas homeless shelter that had recently taken care of him.
Was there for a while. Me and Little Rock. I didn't press him. He just was rambling on in the cafeteria line. Follow me. So I would have to say that he was definitely not 100% in all mental capabilities. You have a good breakfast?
Yeah.
Where you headed?
Richmond.
Ron and the drifter were headed in opposite directions.
Good luck.
Outside the cafeteria, they parted ways.
Well, there were several things about the encounter that made us feel optimistic that it was a positive identification for John. And the first was the white shirt and tie, because that would be typical for him to be wearing that, because that's what he wore every day. He also mentioned the fact that he used very correct English and sounded like he was a well-educated person, which was obviously correct.
Morning yet?
Oh, yes, it's morning.
For John's parents, the clincher was Jackson's description of the man's shoes. Their son had had just such a pair of slip-on moccasins, a pair that was now missing.
We knew that John had a pair of shoes like this. We had not mentioned that to anyone up until this point in time.
It was a very emotional bit of information, and immediately my thought was, we've got to find him quick and get him home. He's wandering around and not knowing who he is.
No one can be sure why John Cheek disappeared, but his father believes John suffered a sudden episode of stress-induced amnesia known as the fugue state.
It's sort of a self-preservation mechanism. If something in their past has become so stressful that they can't stand it any longer, then that's how they deal with it. They just block it all out, and you're no longer John Cheek, and you're no longer a financial officer, and you're no longer putting together a big deal.
Since Ron Jackson's sighting in February of 1994, there has been no further word of John Cheek. John has brown hair, blue eyes, and stands 6 feet tall. Before disappearing, he weighed 150 pounds. John Cheek is 28 years old.
There's a hole in my heart, and I'm hoping that all of this publicity will find someone that can fill that void, and a mother never gives up.
Join me next time. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.
Thank you.